Okay, well, welcome everyone to January's town hall for ACAO, Attending College in a Pandemic, a Student Perspective. We're really excited today to have three students come talk to us about what's really going on from a student perspective. And with that, I'm going to let Greg Ochoa from West Virginia University, Potomac State College, and also the chair of the facilitators to open up this conversation. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Doreen. Welcome, everybody. As Doreen said, we are very excited, so we'll get right into it. I am going to introduce briefly just the name of our students and where they're from. Each student, if you'll say hello, so you pop up to the top so they can see you, and then we'll jump right in. So we have with us today Norman Jones from James Madison University.
Hello.
And Lamont Evanson from Lehman College.
Hello.
And Haley Sebastian from West Virginia University, Potomac State College.
Hi.
And with me today as a co-facilitator, Heather Coltman from James Madison University. So, thank you. So we'll get right into it. And we'll just I'll start with just an easy question for the panelists, for the students. If you just tell us a little more about yourself, we would really appreciate it. You want to start, Lamont?
Okay. Hi, everyone again. So my name is Lamont R. Evanson, and I am an international student from Antigua and Barbuda in the Caribbean. For the past 3.5 years, I have been attending the City University of New York Lehman College, where I recently graduated with a bachelor's in chemistry, concentration in biochemistry. In addition, I was also the first Schwarzman Scholar to hail from my institution and one of 8 CUNY students to have ever been awarded this fellowship. As an undergraduate, I became very interested in research, so I was able to be a research assistant both on and off campus. And I also held office as a senator and participated in several other on-campus organizations. In the future, I want to gain a MD PhD, but before I do so, I'll be traveling to China, where I will be deepening my understanding of policy and politics through the Masters of Global Affairs offered by the Schwarzman Scholars Program.
Thank you very much. Haley, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go. That's a tough act to follow. I'm Haley. I'm from Potomac State College. I'm originally from Hedgesville, West Virginia. It's about an hour and a half from here. I graduated magna cum laude in 2019 at my high school. I was in National Honor Society. I was also in French National Honor Society. I'm very passionate about other languages. This is my second year at Potomac State. This will be my 4th semester as a resident assistant on campus. It's definitely the best job that I've ever had. I will graduate this May with an associate's degree in psychology. And then next year I plan to transfer to West Virginia University, Morgantown main campus. And there I'll just continue studying psychology with an emphasis in criminology. Some hobbies I do like, I'm very into painting and kayaking in the summer. I do a lot of that. I like being outdoors. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Norman, definitely not least, just last in this order.
Of course, I'm the third, so I'm always okay with being third in the list. Hi, everyone. My name is Norman Jones III. I'm a senior honors college student at JMU, where I'm studying public policy and administration with a concentration in public management. And so what that means for career aspirations is I want to get into state and local government. I really want to get into administration and bureaucracy and see how we can, shortcut some of the obstacles there to make sure that policy works for the people who want it. We want to make sure that things are effective, but I'll spare you the political speech. At JMU, I'm very, very involved. I'm most notably in my second term as our student representative to the Board of Visitors. So my job is to make sure that our 22,000 students are represented in all of our decision making. But I'm also involved as a campus tour guide. and the revitalizing president of BOND, Brothers of a New Direction, which focuses on supporting, engaging, and connecting minority male identifying students on our campus. So I've held a bunch of other roles as well, from student government to some smaller organizations, but I'm really excited to be here and share some of that experience as a JMU student with all of you. So thanks for having us.
That's fantastic. It was great to hear a little bit more about each of you. So we'll get right into what this panel is about today. So based on all the changes that occurred to college life due to the pandemic, we'd like to know what you would like to keep after we get back to somewhat normal life. So what new thing did you get used to that was a good idea and you'd like to keep it? And then the second part of that question, I'll just add, and what do you want to get rid of and never come back to again?
So I guess I'll go first.
Great, thank you.
So I think there are two specific things that I would keep after the pandemic. The first has to do with online classes. Before the pandemic, I was not really a fan of online classes. I absolutely hated them. But I believe that during the pandemic, that the increase in the number and types of classes offered online, that should be kept. So my institution is located in the Bronx, New York, and the Bronx is known as a very low income community. And many of the students who attend Lehman College are older. So they have families, they have jobs, and they have other responsibilities that they have to worry about in addition to school. However, during COVID, there were many classes offered online that were never offered before. So this increased the flexibility for those students, and it was easier for them to meet degree requirements. Like, I've spoken to so many students in the past who were unable to take classes because they had to work, or they had some other family engagement that they had to tend to. And a personal example is last semester, I was able to do a research internship, which was in Brooklyn. So I had to commute, and without having those online classes, I would have probably never been able to do that. The second thing that I would keep is virtual campus events. So before the pandemic, there were many events that were held on my campus, whether it be departmental or student organizations. And this is something which continued even in the face of the pandemic. And I thought that was really great because, as I said before, many of the students that attend my institution are older. So sometimes they can't attend, and then you get a low turnout. However, like during the pandemic, you saw more students interacting with each other, and we were able to still foster that community. So those are two things that I would keep. Something that I would eliminate would be the synchronous online classes, only because it eliminates that flexibility that I was talking about before. So for students who are full-time moms or full-time dads, or who have full-time jobs, they are not able to fully benefit from the online classes because you still have to be there at that specific time. And something else that I wouldn't fully eliminate, but probably edit, would be the way in which advanced science labs are taught online. I know we have no idea where we're going to be in the future, and we probably may have to keep labs online, but like finding more ways to make them interactive. I had to take an advanced science lab online, and I don't think that I fully grasped all the concepts that I was supposed to, just because that interaction wasn't there. So, trying to find ways to make the online classes better.
Thank you. And Haley, Lamont, Norman, feel free to interact and have a discussion as well. We don't have to be so formal, but who else would like to jump in next?
I can go ahead and jump in. I wanted to kind of touch on what Lamont said, and what he would keep. As a resident assistant, I definitely see a lot that goes on, especially in my hall on campus. I'm constantly out there with them, helping them even during the pandemic. And honestly, I definitely like the idea of the hybrid classes. They can be in person or they can be online. It's very accessible. And it definitely is accommodating to people who are, older generations wanting to come to college, have families, just like he said. But also, speaking personally, as myself, last year, there were classes that I couldn't attend because of many different reasons. And it was always difficult to try and make up that attendance because I had some classes that relied on your attendance. So now just being able to shoot your professor an email, it's very easy. They're very accommodating. But yeah, I would definitely say to keep the hybrid or online classes. I really like that. And as far as something that I would eliminate, I do, as an RA, I do see a lot of loneliness on campus, a lot of homesickness. It hits around October in the fall and probably February in the spring. And it gets tough on some people. So I don't particularly like the overnight guest policy that we have at the moment. It's, you can't have anybody stay with you from home. And that's a big one. A lot of people have friends from home, friends from high school. And I definitely see that the homesickness as of last year, whenever I was an RA in my freshman year, it definitely helped having friends from home, having people from home be able to come up and visit or just have a day visit. So yeah, I would definitely say that that's something that I would like to get back to. But yeah.
Thank you.
I would say that those are really eye-opening perspectives for me. So just as kind of a peek behind the scenes, only because it's relevant, even yesterday, I meet with student organizations on a weekly basis. So far this semester, I think yesterday I just hit 25. And so it's part of my role with the Board of Visitors to be an advocate, right? And so interestingly enough, it's really surprising to hear these differences from across campuses because what I would like to keep based on what other students are saying and my experience is something that both Lamont and Haley mentioned, that flexibility. But particularly when it comes to agency, I think the pandemic has really revealed that a lot of things are the way that they are because we chose to make them that way. And we can also choose to undo them or adjust them or make them flexible. So one thing I would definitely want to keep is that hybrid option, like Haley said. I think it opens up from like a university standpoint, it opens up your student body. Now we can have more access to people who want to attend your university, but for one reason or another can't be there in person. But also I think it is more convenient and it's helpful and it's worked for people. But something I would like to eliminate, contrary to what Lamont said, and this is just based on my experience, is actually getting rid of asynchronous courses. And I think you made a very good point there. Certainly one I don't agree with or don't disagree with. I think the student experience, I know the student experience has really been hampered by asynchronous classes on our campus. A lot of students miss having that sort of class bonding or being together or some sort of common identity. When you spend 3 or 4 months with the same group of people, you start to learn about them. And then you can piece together, okay, this is what my campus looks like. I see this person here or there, and I can at least recognize them. And so it's just very interesting and eye-opening to hear different perspectives. But I would definitely think getting rid of asynchronous would be a great way to help preserve what I think a lot of campuses are trying to do to keep that in-person energy. I can't find the right word for that. But those would be my thoughts there.
Would anybody, Lamont or Haley, like to respond or add anything?
Yeah, I wanted to say something about the asynchronous classes. I do agree. I think that we need those. We need that common identity among students. It's a lot whenever we're all in our rooms and we're all on Zoom or we're all, working on homework at different times. Just getting together and like in our lounge, in our hall, it really helps just being together, spaced apart, but being together. So I do like the idea of the asynchronous classes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with it fostering community because I do, don't get me wrong, I do like synchronous courses because it keeps me accountable, but it was more so for students who are unable to do that. So like maybe some sort of middle ground would be like having courses both synchronous and asynchronous for like different sections. So like if you're unable to come into the school, you can still do the same course, but asynchronous.
Great. I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Great. Well, this is just fantastic listening to all of you and with the clarity that you all have and the thoughtfulness that you're all bringing to the conversation. So a question that we want to talk about is what possible meaningful experience did you have that wouldn't have happened without the changes in the pandemic, right? So has there been something particularly meaningful or impactful that came about as a result of the pandemic? So I guess what I'm trying to do is opposite of what we read about in the newspaper. You know, what are the worst things? What are the terrible things? How terrible are you feeling? We want to flip that on its end. So I don't know if that's something you'd like to think about and take turns responding to or talk about.
Yeah. If I can hop in first, I think we'd be remiss to acknowledge that over the past year, the pandemic and a push for racial equity are very much woven together. And a meaningful experience that we had on our campus was in the wake of the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. We had a town hall. We had a couple different ones, but they centered our Black community and alumni and staff, employees, faculty. And we had a couple, I think 2 or 3 of those town halls in the summer, pretty shortly after those incidents gained national and international attention. And so I say that I don't know that those would have happened, or at least not in the same way, due to the changes of the pandemic. Because one, I don't think we would have been in that situation if we weren't all sitting at home. I don't think we would have, and I don't think that's something that's even arguable at this point. You know, I don't think we would have had that national spotlight on this issue if we weren't all forced to see and learn and hear about it. But also the technology behind it wouldn't have happened without the pandemic. Fun fact, I'm a legacy student at JMU. My parents met here. So I've been here my entire life. And it's not been a bad thing either. But I haven't had an experience outside of homecoming where so many alumni, community members, students, faculty, and administrators, all of those groups were all part of a really robust conversation at one time about a passionate issue. And so that was really meaningful to hear those stories about student experiences on campus, about life after college and university and what that means when it comes to race relations. So I think we should definitely continue to lean into that and continue having those meaningful experiences, because we now know we have that access to reach out and learn from each other in a new way. So that would be my answer.
I'll go ahead and jump in on that. Contrary to what he said, I am actually a first generation college student. This is nobody in my family has gone to college. I am the first person to ever attend college. So that it's a little heavy weight on my shoulders. And especially, you know, I went to Potomac State College. It's a smaller campus. It's smaller than WVU. So next year I will be going to a much bigger campus, a much larger campus. So I'm nervous about that. But honestly, when I first came to Potomac State, I wanted to get myself out there. I was on varsity cheer in high school, and that was kind of my way of getting myself out in high school, but I no longer had that in Potomac State. So that's when I decided to be an RA. I wanted to help people. I wanted to help my residents. And I was essentially hired to do a job now that the pandemic has happened. I was essentially hired to do a job that I can no longer do. I'm forced to rethink it entirely. You know, last year, my freshman year, I was able to hold all of these different programs and campus events that we could all meet, we could all have fun together. But now we can't have a group more than 5 people in a room together. And so I've been really, you know, forced to rethink how I thought last year. I've been holding, you know, virtual Zooms, stuff like that, to try and get people together. And I wanted to note two of my best friends now. I actually met them on a Zoom. So that's probably my most meaningful experience at the beginning of the semester. We had to painfully lose a Family Feud game together. But that brought us very close. And now, I mean, we are always together every single day. I have lunch and dinner with them. And without the pandemic, I don't know if that would have happened. I don't know if I would have gotten that close to them, but I think it's very notable that I do have to rethink, like I said, how I bring the communities together for my job. And I love it. genuinely enjoy getting together, even for floor meetings and information. It's a lot of fun, but yeah.
So going off of what Haley said, I do believe that the pandemic really allowed us to meet more individuals, even more than we could have done in the past. Before COVID-19, I had just started a job on campus as a college assistant for our fellowship office, known as the Office of Prestigious Awards. And our main goal was to increase student awareness of funding opportunities, and this was already a difficult task, because as I mentioned before, like we have a lot of older students, so trying to like interact with them and getting individuals to the office and to our events was already hard. And in the face of the pandemic, it made it even harder. So we had to find new ways in which like we could still engage students. And one of the ways in which we did that was to create community spaces on several different platforms. For example, we use WhatsApp and we use Microsoft Teams, where we were still able to promote the funding opportunities and different scholarships and fellowships. And we were able to meet with students. And this allowed us to meet even more students than we could have ever imagined that we would have met in person. I went from meeting like maybe 2 to 3 students a week in person to meeting 20 to 25 in a virtual platform on Zoom or on Teams. And we were really able to spread that awareness about funding opportunities and opportunities for graduate school and different scholarships and fellowships that are available to students. And from a personal experience, myself, like I was able to interview prep with professors and professionals outside of my institution for the fellowship that I won, that I probably would have never been able to do if it was in person, because everyone always had that busy schedule. They couldn't make this meeting, but with a virtual platform, it made it much easier. So I think one of the most meaningful experiences throughout this whole pandemic was the way in which I was able to interact with more people.
Well, that's kind of what I'm finding too from the level of administrators and talking to faculty. It's the same thing, right? In many ways, we're saving a lot of time and energy by not walking across campus and parking our car and driving to the other building, and right, just being able to sit and focus on the conversation. So they're definitely assets, and it's great to hear you articulate them. So Greg, over to you.
Sure. So now we'd like to give you an opportunity to ask each other. So is there something you'd like to ask another panelist about their experience? Since, you know, it's apparent you're from different parts of the country, different types of schools. So is there something that you'd like to ask?
I actually had a question. I wanted to ask you guys, you know, how do you effectively bring the community together? Like, what are some of your ideas on how, like, you know, programming or events on campus, like, what would you suggest?
This is a question for the other panelists, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Spotlight's on you and Norman.
Okay.
Yes.
I would say from my institution standpoint, like I feel like when it comes to community, like we're big on that. Even though we're a commuter school, so there's no on-campus housing, anything like that. Everyone that comes to Lehman mostly commutes. And I would say the way in which we foster community is through the events. And that's why I thought it was so important to still have those events going through the pandemic, even though they're virtual. And then having them virtual makes them even more accessible to students who are not able to be on campus 24/7. But I would say having those events constantly, like I could probably like there's an event every day. There's something you can do every day on campus, and like you meet so many different people and you're just able to talk, whether it be about what interests you share or something completely random. I think that's what really is able to foster community between students on campus. And now we have the ability to do it virtually, which makes it even better.
That's a really good question. It was one I was going to ask as well. um, but from what has worked, I think when it comes to community engagement, it's been helpful for me as an organizer and also an attendee for like the events that are put together. We don't really hide the fact that it's not the same, or that it might not be as engaging, or you might not have the same experience. The events I've attended, I think it's been really, for me, really helpful that they acknowledge, or at least don't try to, I can't find the right word, but I think we've all been on Zoom calls where we try to make it as close to in person as possible. And it's really hard to just, try and keep that facade up sometimes, especially with Zoom fatigue. So I think it's been helpful to have events that are just owning that they're virtual and in this new format, and we're going to use this in a new way and not try and recreate what it used to be like a year ago, because that just can't happen. So that's been really helpful for community engagement. And another thing that I found helpful is personal outreach. So having administrators or faculty, aside from class-related things or events, and even student to student, I reach out to student leaders often just to say, hey, how are things going? I don't have any real stake in saying, if things are going well, I can help, but I don't make the decisions, So I think that's been helpful for community engagement, to just reach out and say, hey, things are different. I would usually see you in class or whatever, or at this event, but just wanted to see how things are going. And usually I've noticed that helps lead into events, because then you have someone reach out and say, hey, are you going to this event? Are you watching this speaker? That's been helpful. So hopefully, does that answer your question in some way?
Yeah, it definitely helps. Thanks, guys.
Any other questions for each other?
I wanted to sort of know about like what your institution did, like in terms of resources that were set in place to help students that were severely affected by the pandemic. Like, for example, like my institution, as I said before, my institution is situated in a very low income community. So some individuals were affected more than others, and there were emergency grants and care packages that were set in place. So I'm just wondering like what other institutions did during the pandemic to help students.
So a couple of things that I know that WVU did, since we are one of their satellite campuses, we're kind of under them. They did send out different care packages, different, grants and stuff like that for financial aid. They definitely helped me out. But on campus, as far as resources, we have the library that's open all the time. It's open, they have late hours, they're very accessible. They have people over there that can help you with pretty much anything. We have tutoring. It's all the time. If you fall behind or if you need something, we do have counselors on campus. Your academic advisors, they are always great to go to, especially on campus. And living on campus, we do have a great housing department, I would say. As an RA, I definitely lean on them. I lean on my coworkers as well. But yeah, I would definitely say that.
I wrote down care packages. That just sounds like a fantastic idea. And so maybe, Haley, I'll reach out to you to learn a little bit more about what that looks like. I think that's fantastic. In a similar vein, I remember at the beginning of the pandemic in March and April, we had this fundraising campaign called Madison for Keeps. And so I'll keep it brief. CARES funding was certainly part of helping people stay on campus, but we have a population of students here who are not citizens, they're DACA recipients, and so they cannot be covered by CARES funding to help supplement their tuition or aid. And so we had a scholarship campaign where I don't remember the number in particular, but I want to say it was at least $400,000. Provost Coleman, you can correct me. But we raised money essentially to help keep some of the students who weren't eligible for that kind of aid, to keep them on campus, to fulfill some of their needs, whether that's housing, tuition. That was perhaps the biggest effort that stood out to me and I was really proud of. But otherwise, ways to provide resources for students affected by COVID. Our libraries also did a lot of great work with making so many different resources available online. I mean, I would personally like to toot our horn. We have a great library system here. I think they're fantastic. And they went the extra mile, continually putting things online. They boosted their social media presence to reach students in ways they hadn't before, which is another pro tip. I think that would still be helpful moving forward. It's something we should keep from the pandemic. We need to reach people in new ways, and really be active in those ways too. We can't just post once a week or think that we put a link here, people will show up to this. We have to put in a little more effort. I guess it's just kind of, a sunken cost there. But libraries did a good job of making resources available. And I think the third thing is, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a bunch of faculty, professors, and our counselors. I can't remember the particular name, but they reached out to students, I think weekly or bi-weekly, and just send an email and said, hey, we know that this is a tough time. I've volunteered my time to be a sort of counselor for you and just a resource to go to talk to. And those were really helpful. I personally didn't take advantage of them. The pandemic did not hit me as hard as it did others, but I know dozens of students at minimum use that resource really effectively. So I think those would be the three key ways we put resources together for students.
So Norman, that's a nice segue into a question that Betty Bergeron has submitted through the chat. Understanding, the pandemic has affected 99% of us with significant impacts on our health and mental wellness. And the question is, how can universities more effectively support students in coping with these stressors?
I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to speak personally on this one because back in November, I got COVID. I was sent home. I was here. It was very early November. And my best friend ended up getting it. And then I got it a little while after that. So they were able to actually have a whole dorm on Potomac State, a whole residence hall that students could quarantine in. I actually was able to go home. I was fortunate enough to be able to quarantine at home. But as for, support for students and coping with the stresses of the pandemic in general, I was checked on multiple times a week by administrators from campus. I had calls from Dean Lucas Taylor on campus. He called me probably 3 times a week to make sure I was okay. And, just honestly, just being there for the students, just being there to listen to them, to listen to their stresses. It really, really helps. It really helped me. And I definitely see that it is effective when we just listen.
Yes, I do agree with Haley. Something else that I think was really helpful during the pandemic, as I mentioned before, I was a college assistant at my school's fellowship office, and I used to host workshops weekly. And what we would do during the icebreaker is that we would just ask the students random questions. And as Norman said, we didn't make it normal. We didn't make it feel normal because it's not normal. So we would just ask them questions about the pandemic, how they're feeling, if they want to get anything off their chest, just say it, because other people could be going through the same things. So just creating that space where individuals could feel comfortable to talk about what they're going through, and other students could give them advice because they may be going through the same thing and stuff like that. And we also had the WhatsApp group that we created, and that was really great for students because you get to connect with others, and we weren't just talking about fellowships, but students they were sending memes and different things like that, just being interactive and keeping your mental health in a good place. So I think that was a way that the specific office at my institution tried to help students cope during the hard time that the pandemic brought on.
Yeah, I agree 100% with both Haley and Lamont. If I could add one thing, it would be, I literally just forgot it, but I'll remember it soon enough and mention it. But I think those are 2 great options as well. Having those just regular interactions and giving people space to just talk about what's going on, because we can't avoid it. I mean, it's a pandemic. it's a once in a century type thing. So yeah.
Before we segue into getting more questions from everybody attending, I'd like Peter to introduce yourself. He was also part of the group that kind of organized this. Peter?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Greg, and I am enjoying listening to wonderful students. I'm Peter Mosu. I'm Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and Student Success at Lehman College, which is part of the City University of New York. I don't want to interrupt. This is really a wonderful discussion going on. So you're all wonderful. You're great. So excellent.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Now it's time for everybody else to participate. Please, you can either unmute yourself and ask a question yourself. You can ask a question in the chat, something that we didn't hit on, but feel free, open this up for questions for our panelists.
And Greg, I don't know if this question has been addressed by a wonderful panelist, but I wanted to get a sense of their thoughts on the classroom experience. The interactions that took place, the nature of instruction, and what you got out of it, and what you would recommend to us as academic leaders in terms of shaping professional development opportunities for faculty, and certainly helping students as well.
So I'm going to speak on Potomac State. I am fortunate enough to have the majority of my classes in person. I walk right across the quad. It's probably like a 3-minute walk. It's a very small campus if you guys have ever been here. But it's so nice to be able to be in person. I know that a lot of campuses aren't fortunate enough to have in-person classes anymore. But just being there and having, that one-on-one with your professor with small class sizes, because we are also fortunate enough to have pretty small classes. So that's probably why we can meet in person. But they are, they do socially distance. They make sure that you are comfortable, that you're comfortable in your classroom setting, that you can effectively, learn in a safe environment. And I think that's so important. But yeah, just being able to be in person, having that option, as well as having a virtual option, kind of like we were hinting at the hybrid earlier. I think it's important to realize that being in person is just as important as being virtual and being online, because that personal interaction, coming from a psych major, it definitely helps a person and helps academically. Yeah.
In a similar vein, we touched on this a little bit earlier about the synchronous versus asynchronous options and how they both suit different needs really well, but at the same time, they don't mitigate the challenges of each other always, So if you have an asynchronous option, you're missing some of that classroom bonding experience. And if you're doing a synchronous option, you're losing some of that flexibility. And so when Haley touched on the hybrid option, I agree 100%. That might be, I think, the format moving forward and trying to find a way to balance the two to give students more options. I do think another thing or an adjustment in that class experience is I've heard from some students, this hasn't been a consistent thing, but workload has been a challenge. And some of you might have experienced this as well. I think we all just moved to the assumption that if we're at home all day, I can do a whole lot more. I can be way more productive. And then here we are 9 months in, being at home all the time. It's not necessarily the case. And so finding a way, I'm sure we'll reach a middle ground or a median at some point. Finding a way to balance workload and know that even though things are kind of more restricted, there's less time for travel and energy to be exerted to make things happen. We still have to be mindful of that balance because sometimes you just need a break. We don't have to have 15 readings every day, things like that. So this is our first time trying this whole virtual class experience. There are going to be wrinkles, but the sooner we can find and identify some of those challenges, I think the better off we'll be in the future.
I also do agree with Norma on that. I feel like so before the pandemic, I stayed away from online. Like I never wanted to do online. I just always thought that I'm an in-person kind of guy. Like I like having that interaction. And then switching online, I felt like the work got even more, like there was more work for us to do. And however, like in an online format, like you still have to be mindful that students need a break. Something else that I would say is trying to find ways to make those online courses more interactive. I hated online classes in the beginning because, you know, you were just going to the class and sitting and like doing stuff on your own. So finding ways to still interact with the professor, that they're not just sitting and lecturing at you, but finding ways to interact with students and integrate them into the lessons, that would be really helpful going forward, and maybe more people would be interested in doing online classes. But overall, like switching from completely in person to completely online was a bit difficult for me at first. However, as I said before, like synchronous helps because it keeps you accountable. You have to be there at that specific time. However, you still have to think about flexibility. You still want it to be flexible for students. So like just keeping those things in mind going forward.
So, excuse me. So Lori Worth comments that she's so proud of you as young, talented students. And her question is, how have you personally grown during the past 9 months? And what particular skills do you think you have acquired during COVID-19?
I've definitely got a lot better at working out online classes, kind of like Lamont said. I was very nervous when we went online my spring semester last year, mostly because, you know, I didn't know how the professors were going to be with online classes. I was in chemistry, I was in biology. I had labs that I had to do, and I had no clue how to navigate them when we went online. But I think, you know, personally, I've just learned how much, I guess, how to appreciate whenever you are in person and whenever you do have that personal interaction with people. I appreciate that a whole lot more. I appreciate when I get to go home and hug my mom, like stuff like that. Really, it sticks with you now. It makes you appreciate what you have. But yeah.
I would say that I personally grew in confidence. I don't know if it's because I'm behind a webcam and I'm not in person, but I think my confidence has significantly shot up. The on-campus job that I had, like I constantly had to be interacting with students and professors and other professionals outside of my institution. So like that involved workshops, having constant Zoom calls. So, you know, like it came to a point where I was just like, oh, this is completely normal. Like I don't have to feel nervous. Yes, I still do get nervous, but you know, like it began to normalize, and I feel like that's something that I will take away from the pandemic, even though like I'll be going back in person, and that just adds another dimension to it. But I still feel like that confidence will still remain with me after the pandemic.
I think I could say there's a small thing and a big thing. The small thing is learning how to be concise. I think we all are tired of emails. We wake up with 50 new emails every morning. That had to change real quick. So what do I need to tell you for the day? And can I put that in one email? And can you reply in one email? And if that's the case, maybe we can do a Zoom call, but sifting through the inbox can be a challenge sometimes. But I would say the bigger learning for me has been a new sense of reality or being realistic. Realistic with yourself. I've learned how to limit my bandwidth a little bit more. Provost Coltman can tell you, if we were in person, you would see me, if you time lapse it, I'd just walk around the campus all day, class, meeting, that kind of thing. So being realistic with your time and your energy, but then also realistic with the work that you do, the effort you put into things. Do I have enough energy to make something really, of great quality right now? Do I have enough energy to attend a 6th meeting today? Do I have enough energy to go in and talk with students or my peers? Sometimes the answer to any of those questions is yes or no. And sometimes we have to push ourselves out of that comfort zone, especially in this environment. So I've definitely gained a new sense of reality and just being honest and transparent with myself and others. It's always okay to say, I think it's okay to send an email, hey, can we reschedule this meeting to tomorrow or another point? Unless it's something really pressing, just today has just been really hectic and I need to go up and take a walk. So we can make it a phone call. We can do a WebEx on the phone. If you can just send an email, I will respond to you immediately. But sometimes I think it's better to just be honest and transparent for the sake of getting things done the right way. Last thing we want is a meeting that wastes our time and energy. So
Those are all great learnings. Thank you so much. We have one more question. Christine Hammond says, many thanks to these student leaders. What communication strategies worked best in getting information about the pandemic and your campus situation to students?
I would say it is probably no secret that our generation is very much in touch and on our cell phones. So like he was saying with your email inbox, sometimes I don't even want to check my emails when I wake up because I know I'm going to wake up to probably 50 new emails. And sifting through that box is just, it's exhausting when, you don't know what you're going to come into. And I personally will go on, Instagram or some kind of social media to get a break from that. And my campus has done a fantastic job with being in touch and on social media. They have a really big social media platform. So I'm constantly seeing them. I get information from, their Instagram page. They're constantly posting. Like today, they gave us information. The first place I saw that we didn't have class was on Instagram. Because I didn't want to check my email. But I definitely think that communication strategies, if I would say, I would just say, being on social media and being there, being an influence on there, it definitely helps get in touch with our generation these days.
I'll keep it brief. I agree 100%. Maximize the new channels. Social media is now a tool. It's not just a place to, microblog. So I think we should maximize that tool. And another thing is targeted outreach. So I know that not everyone's home life situation is equivalent or congruent, but if we also do outreach to parents, guardians, loved ones, even close friends, alumni even, kind of reaching up or messaging up so things travel down, that's another way that's been helpful. So those would be my 2 suggestions.
I will also have to agree that social media is the answer to that. Yes, emails are great. However, when we see too many emails coming in, and this is speaking from experience, you kind of just ignore it, maybe sending it multiple times, but I feel like that may make it worse. But I feel like it always goes back to this. When I was a college assistant, we did not have a social media presence before the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit, we had to have a social media presence because that's how students were going to find out about our events. And that's how students are going to find out about different fellowships that are being offered. But this doesn't only work for that, but it can work for other reasons as well, because my institution also has a large social media presence. And that is the way that I've found out about a lot of the things, whether a grant is being offered, an emergency grant, or different events that are happening virtually and stuff like that. So I believe that, like trying to find different ways to like integrate your information into social media platforms, encouraging different departments to open a social media platform, that would be really great.
Thank you. There's not another question, but as we're getting closer to the 2 o'clock hour, I would just ask each of you panelists, you have the audience right now of numerous academic leaders at all different types of colleges and institutions across the country. Something that we haven't hit on, is there something that you would like us to know? All of us supervise faculty, deans, staff. Is there something that you'd like us to know to be able to pass on and to make students' lives easier, to be more successful?
Yeah, and this has been a big thing that I've tried to iterate in my board role too, is in a moment like this, I would say two things. One, everything is up in the air. I think this is a time to say all options are on the table. We should not rule anything out when it comes to changing or adjusting or adapting. Of course, unless it's like immoral, right? I want to be very clear. But when it comes to new ideas and innovation, this is the moment to seize it. Try new things. Do something you've never done before when it comes to engaging with students or innovating your courses. Trying new ways to make things happen. Because I mean, I'm hoping within the next year we won't be in this situation anymore, and we're going to be working to get back to business as usual or as our new usual. So if we have this opportunity to just try things and people will be understanding and knowing that, I don't know, I mean, it might work, it might not. We have to really sink our teeth into this opportunity. And the second point would be engage with students. Engage with students. We don't have that in-person communication, and it's going to take, it will take more effort than usual to stay connected. But it's something I think we have to do to preserve our institutions as communities. Well, also by extension, I think the educational mission too. How can you teach someone you aren't connected to? So really reach out, dig into student engagement in regular ways, formal ways, always be asking students, what do they need? How are they doing? Because again, if we're not doing this right now, when everything is up in the air, when we have so many crises going on, from a student perspective, it's hard to believe that that'll happen when things get back to normal. I mean, and that's just the honest truth. If everything is a mess now and we can't reach out to each other, I don't know that I can expect that to happen 2 years from now. So take advantage of this opportunity to be creative and do something entirely new.
I love his idea. When I'm thinking about, things that you guys could do, I would definitely say reach out, be there for the students. That's all they're asking for. It's hard enough on students to navigate through this pandemic, like with us, we go to in-person classes, but not everybody has in-person classes. Not everybody meets people daily. Some just stay in their room. Some are on Zoom all day. I mean, my job is getting them out of their room, getting them to go to programs or getting them to log on to Zoom. And it is challenging. And like I said, I have to have, I've found new ways of getting in touch with them. I'll knock on their door. I will be there. I am a very in-person kind of person. I'll drag them out of their room. I'll be like, listen, there's pizza in the lounge. Go get it. Like, just get out of your room, like this is a very isolated society with the pandemic. And, me, myself, I've been there. I know what it's like. But yeah, I would definitely just recommend being there for them. They just want somebody to listen to them.
I couldn't have said it better. I'd just like to echo that, engaging with students. I feel like sometimes we don't realize how much it means to a student when you engage with them, specifically administrators. Like I've seen students get really excited when they meet the president or they meet the provost or some big administrator in the university. So just engaging with students, letting them know that you're still here, asking them what they would like to see in the institution, how it can be made better to suit them, because the institution is primarily for them. So, just keeping in touch with them and seeing what can be done going forward, or how the institution overall can better their experience at during their time studying.
That was so insightful. I've been taking some notes throughout this whole thing from the students that I'm going to share with the rest of the leadership team on our campus. So I would first of all want to thank Haley, Norman, Lamont for taking the time. I know we sent you some questions in advance in preparing. You're well-spoken, great ideas. You were great representatives from your institution. So thank you so much for being here. And if we were in person, panelists, there'd be lots of clapping. There you go, lots of clapping going on right now. And then I'm going to take a shameless plug. I'm also the chair of the membership committee for the academic officers. And if you're watching this and you're not a member yet, this is just one example of something that we offer our members. Doreen's going to pop up the closing slide that has our website information. Feel free to go to our website, check us out. The website's not there, but if you do a search for the Association of Chief Academic Officers, it'll come up. You can learn about all the opportunities that we have. And for me personally, it's a great support network to strategize and bounce something off. We have an Ask the Members email system. And it's just a great opportunity for you to have a network of other people that many times you don't have anybody else to talk to about certain things you're going through. So again, thank you, the panelists. I want to thank everybody for attending. I think this was a great success, and look out for our February town hall. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.